Drawing a realistic hair with colored pencils look easy from outside, but when you actually try to do it, it becomes so difficult. This usually happens because colored pencil drawing requires different kind of techniques than graphite or charcoal drawing. Today, we are talking about those techniques. If you're interested in seeing my real-time, fully narrated tutorials, this is my Patreon address. Also, you can find all the materials I use and where I got them from. They're all listed in the description part. Now, grab your colored pencils. We are drawing hair. To start with, I would like to show you the paper that I'm using. It's Fabriano Bristol smooth paper and is 250 grams. It's a great paper, I highly recommend it. And about the draft, I have to tell you, okay, we are using graphite pencil, usually HB, but don't forget to erase it. I think kneaded eraser is a great tool for that, because if you forget to erase those graphite lines, then it gives your colored pencil drawing a very dirty look. Blonde hair. So I start with blonde hair, and I'm going to tell you now step by step how I drew this beautiful curly hair. I started with the shadows. I highly recommend you to start with the darkest shadow first, and for these shadows I used sepia. Sepia is a very dark brown tone, very close to black, but it has warmth and it has more depth, so I highly recommend it for your shadows. Here you see me applying all these darker areas, especially closer to where the hair curls, right? And I'm going step by step. I'm adding all the hairlines. It is important to have your pencil sharpened because we are drawing hair, it shouldn't be blunt. Also remember that this is smooth paper and it has very fine tooth. In order to get into those tooth, we need to have a sharp pencil. The second thing I did was adding the raw umber. So the raw umber is a little bit like greenish brown. First time I used it, I was saying like, oh, what the heck, this is not a natural color, I'm not gonna use it. But then I realized actually it adds a very nice, very natural shadow look. And I can see that color right here in the reference photo, so I'm adding all those raw umber tones wherever I see them. Now, burnt sienna. Burnt sienna has this reddish tone. I don't see it everywhere here. I only see it on the upper part of the hair. So I'm applying burnt sienna on the darkest shadows a little bit, only in the upper area. Now it's time for brown ochre. I love brown ochre because it gives warmth to this hair. I love how it looked on the top part, so I started to add my lightest tone, which is brown ochre 10%. It's like a cream color. It's like a skin tone. Usually I use it for skins. But one thing to remember, I am not putting pressure at all. I am lightly shading everything, because if you apply pressure and burnish them, it will be really difficult to add the next layers. Why brown ochre 10%, guys? Because yellow is not a natural color. If you add yellow to blonde hair, it's not going to look natural. It's going to look very fake. So you have to avoid using yellow colors. And brown ochre 10% is one of the best colors that you can use in blonde hair. I'm adding more brown ochre. You can see that I'm adding more and more depth to the shadow areas because this is my second layer, and I think I'm going to do a third layer as well. And you see the steps that I'm following. I added sepia first, and I added the other shadows, which are brown ochre and raw umber and burnt sienna. And at the very end, I'm adding the brown ochre 10%. At some point, I'm going to add some white because I would like to highlight some areas. But other than that, I think brown ochre 10% is the only lightest one that I'm using. Now I am burnishing because I'm done with shading. Burnishing means I'm applying a lot of pressure for the latest layer that I'm doing with the lightest color, which is brown ochre 10% here. So I burnished, but I'm not done yet, guys. I'm just going to add more shadows. I'm trying to create depth. So in charcoal drawing or graphite drawing, we create depth by creating darkest shades of gray or black and white, right? Highlights. Here though, we have so many colors. What we are doing is like with the darkest tones, darkest colors, we are trying to create that depth by using them next to the lightest colors. So it's the same logic, but different story. After adding all these different kinds of shadows again, after the burnished layer, I'm going in with white and adding all these highlighted areas. It is important to add the highlights because again, it gives the 3D effect. One thing the white does though, it's going to lighten up the hair. So if you want to keep the dark parts dark, you don't have to apply the white there. Or once you apply it, you should go back in and add all these dark areas again. Now you see me with X-Acto knife, I'm scraping the top layer of the hair. This gives a more natural, more realistic look to the hair. But you have to be careful to not to damage the paper. After, of course, going over with X-Acto knife, I have to again add more hair with my sharpened pencil using all the colors that I have on the right. And I'm going to use X-Acto knife again, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see exactly how I do it. When I'm using X-Acto knife, I'm not necessarily following the direction of the hair sometimes because you have flying hair and that might go in different directions. So you have to really consider that. And that means you have to keep looking at your reference photo. See, for example, here, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Yes, these parts are following the hair direction, but here, for example, there's like different directions going in and out, and here too. So these kind of details make the difference in your realistic hair drawing. And after that, adding flying hair is the next step. And to do that, you have to have a very sharp pencil. And you see on the left that I added all these flying hair already. Dark hair is another one that I want to show you today. The color scale is very similar to the blonde one, except the black color is in our list right now. So I'm adding all the shadows again with my sepia. So as you can see, this lock of hair is a little bit complicated, especially towards the middle, but we have to add all these details in our initial draft so that we don't kind of struggle while we are adding our shadows in the first step. And it is dark color, so I will have more sepia this time, and I am not afraid to add more sepia, which is great. And I also forgot to tell you what erasers work best with colored pencils. So when I'm drawing, I think the best ones that worked for me were one, the square type Tombow Mono stick eraser, and the other one is not kneaded eraser, but the electric eraser. As you know, erasing colored pencils are not as easy as erasing graphite or charcoal, so you need a little bit more powerful eraser, and I feel like these two work the best for me. What you realize in my drawing is I am leaving the lightest areas alone. It is important because I don't want to erase it later, or I don't want to make a mistake, so I'm not touching the lightest places with my sepia at all. So I'm being very careful about that. You should be very careful about that as well. Burnt sienna is the next one. As you can see, there's like this little reddish tone to it. So I'm adding all those in where I see, not everywhere, but around where I see next to sepia. So it adds this beautiful kind of reddish brown tone. It looks nice. And of course, after this, I'm gonna go over with my other shadow color to give more depth. So the lightest colors are right here. I want to define those lightest tones. As you can see with brown ochre 10%, I am right going over where the light is reflecting from and where you have these light highlights in the hair. Once I define that, it's going to be easier for me where not to touch it. I'm gonna be able to see where not to touch it. This is sepia again. I'm adding more and more shadows. And of course, because my pencil is sharp, it looks like real hair. Now I'm going to do something interesting. I will burnish all of these with my white color. This is going to create a very nice first base layer, guys. You will see it. And after this, of course, we're gonna add more layers on top. Because white color, especially Caran d'Ache pencils, have this great white pencil. I highly recommend it. It actually brings all the colors together on the first layer, providing us this perfect base layer to draw on. You see, it looks beautiful now, and I can work on it. I can add more details. For example, I have black in my hand because these areas that I'm drawing right now are the darkest parts. They're really dark. And because I already added some brown and white, it's not going to look dull. It's not going to be just like black, you know? We have different combination of colors there, and we are adding black much later. So this is important, guys. Don't add black first. Always mix black with some other color, because otherwise it's not going to have depth. It's not going to look natural. You see, I'm using all the favorite erasers that I talked to you about. After I add the black, I'm going to add a little bit more warmth to our lock of hair here. You see that it's like some colors, a little bit like it's, how can I say, brown ochre is perfect color for that. I see some brown ochre there. So I'm going to add that now so that we can have more temperature and more natural look. It is interesting though, although I added so many sepia layers, it didn't still look as dark as I wanted to look, and I didn't want to add more black, so I guess I could have done many more layers, but oh well. So I added the brown ochre. You see how it affected it? It's just like, it made it more beautiful. It gave it more depth. It looks more natural now. I love brown ochre color. And now with my X-Acto knife, I'm giving this realistic effect without damaging my paper. I'm doing exactly the same thing that I did in the blonde hair. I'm not following exactly the direction of the hair. You can see that there are some flying hair in the reference photo, so I'm just kind of trying to follow those directions. Don't forget to sweep or blow away these bits, guys, because otherwise they might ruin your drawing later. You can lift your paper up too, and it's up to you how you want to clean them. And if you feel like the outline of the hair is not sharp enough, you can always erase them. I'm adding the flying hair with the colors that I chose, like mostly brown ochre and sepia. So I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna slow it down right here so you can see better. This is my brown ochre. I'm doing these curves right here, and I'm gonna have my sepia, and I'm just gonna have the darkest ones right now. See, it looks more natural, it's more realistic this way. Don't Photoshop them, guys. Draw all the flyaway hairs. It's almost done. I'm just going to add more white for the highlighted areas and maybe a little bit more sepia for the darkest, and I'm all good. So the darkest shadow first, and it is followed by other shadows, and finally the lightest tone at the top. Also, we use X-Acto knife, and also we don't forget to add flyaway hairs. And this is the key, guys. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Thanks for watching my video. If you like my videos, please don't forget to subscribe. And for my real-time narrated tutorials, visit my Patreon, patreon.com/Ece Gurler. Stay with art and love.